In 2010, I decided to enlist in the Air Force. I remember going in and signing a piece of paper that said, if you were found to have homosexual conduct, you'd be discharged under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And at that time, I knew that I was gay, and I also knew that I wanted to serve my country. I completed my basic training and went on to technical school at Goodfellow Air Force Base in Texas. One evening after one of my classes, I'm very intoxicated. I was also a virgin. I had never had sex with anyone. I wore a True Love waist ring, very religious upbringing. And I remember going to this pavilion and this guy wanting me to go up to his room. And I remember telling him, I do not want to have sex with you. I do not want to have sex with you. I do not want to have sex with you. I don't know why I remember it 3 times, but I do at least remember telling him that. And the next moments were very, very blurred. Going up to his dorm room, I remember being in a situation where he was forcing me on himself, and I threw up because I thought that I could get away from him. The next moment, I remember being in the shower and trying to push him off me. And then I remember being back in my dorm room the next morning. I didn't know who he was or anything, and I didn't know what to do, really. And so I took a shower, continued with my day, even did my laundry, which I wish I wouldn't have done any of that. But I ended up going along with my day, and I ended up going into the city with other airmen in my area, and we were all on this bus together, and these 2 girls were like, oh, you were hanging out with our classmate. And since I didn't know this person, I had no idea who he was. I was like, oh yeah, what was his name? And so I ended up finding out his name, and the next morning I just woke up and I was like, I need to do something. And I also thought that if I ever become a supervisor in the military, that if I want to ask my troops to report sexual violence or any type of incident, that I needed to make sure that I did it for myself. So I did. I went and filed an unrestricted report, went through the process, had a rape kit done, had the person come and talk to me, investigators, everyone. I mean, the whole chain of command was involved in it. I felt very safe in the environment. I don't think that happens with many folks, but I didn't find it to be invasive like some folks do. I knew that they went to his dorm room and basically accused him and brought him in for questioning. I was assigned a victim advocate, which we're actually still really good friends today, still to this day. But the one thing that I couldn't tell anybody was that I was gay. Because if I had told them that, then I would be investigated under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He was also married and had a child, and they didn't believe me. We were living in the same dorm rooms, like not the same dorm room, but the same facility within walking distance. Because of this incident that happened, they decided to bring his wife to him because he'd be at the base a long time. And so I would see her quite often, and she would give me the worst look, which, if I was in her situation, I'd probably do the same thing, honestly. The Office of Special Investigations was continuing their investigation, and because I didn't really know him, they said, is there any way that we could tap a phone and call him and see if he would confess? And I said, I really don't want to do that. I've never met this guy, but I will put on a wire and go talk to him in person. So I did, and I talked to him, and he confessed to raping me. I mean, I really didn't get anything from that either, from his confession, but I felt like it was just going to be, part of the trial, and, at least I would be seen, and heard, because he did confess. So I finished my tech school, graduated with honors. He was still in waiting. And whenever I went to get my military orders for my next duty station to follow on to go to my job, they told me that they had been canceled and that I would have to stay on the base for an indefinite amount of time for the trial. they ended up putting me on the same duties as he was. So I reported to the same person with him for about a week, and it was so hard. About a year later, they went to the Article 15 hearing, and so the defense attorneys brought me in, and they asked me, well, they had my roommate at the time as a defense witness, which was really like hard for me to see that she was supporting his case. But they asked me if I was gay. The defense did. And I couldn't tell them because I was serving still under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I had to hire an attorney because they had started an investigation into me as trying to discharge me from the military. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was more harmful throughout the whole process than the military sexual assault. And I couldn't tell the attorneys, I know they've made a lot of changes since then, but they couldn't even say, this is how we're gonna ask you on the stand. There was no counseling or no guidance and everything. And so I couldn't tell anyone that I was gay, and that's why I didn't want, and maybe there would have been a different outcome. But even with all those evidence, he was found to be not guilty. And then a couple years after that, his wife at the time reached out to me on Facebook and asked me what had happened, and told me that he had done it to somebody else at a different base and he had been discharged. And then I thought it was all through. I thought, after that time passed, I know the trauma obviously continues for a long time. There's a lot of things that I don't even realize. But then whenever I got out of the military in 2016, I tried to get all my records from everything to go and submit a VA disability claim. And what I found was your mental health records don't follow you from base to base. And the ones that I had for the time period that the sexual violence occurred had been lost. They couldn't find them. I inquired with the base legal, and it seemed like they had been destroyed whenever the trial occurred. I remember seeing the computer flashing that said, basically tell us your story. And I put, you can see my police report. And that was not enough. They actually called me and said, we need to hear your story for us to even submit your claim. And so with the re-traumatization of having to do that, even though it was written out and I had more documentation than probably any individual does have, was, I just didn't want to go through that. You can't claim military sexual trauma just as its own condition. You have to claim it under anxiety or depression or post-traumatic stress. And the first time I went through, they said that because I was so high functioning, they could not put PTSD on there. And so I resubmitted a claim, resubmitted again, and finally got a disability rating that I was happy with. But there are still times where I don't go to a lot of places. Not that it happened in a parking garage, but I'm very fearful of that. For some reason at night, I still don't know. I've been through, a lot of behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, which is the worst. Most people don't like to share their story, but for me, I think it's a healing approach. And so that's what I've been doing. And I share it, especially for those folks who served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and could never share their true selves or get the justice. So being out has been the most beneficial thing for me, and getting to reach folks and tell my story in different venues and putting a face to, what it looks like.